Once I was drowning in my fears, and the twinkle in my eye disappeared, and I had no way to look on. My horizon seemed to have gone.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Us in Egypt's presentation, and we are going to be talking about the practical steps that you need to flourish in the land of the Muslims. Now, as should be pretty clear by now, I'm not here by myself. I have my good brother Zaid, Adib, and Sari, but before I bring him on, I want to introduce him just a little bit. Now, he's my friend, so I know him pretty well, but of course he may be new to some of you. So let me just bring you up to speed on him. He's originally from Ohio, and he is currently, of course, living in Egypt. We're both coming at you from Egypt right now. He is a statistics policy science major, and he's worked in higher education for the last 25 years, walhamdulillah. He is a muhajir, walhamdulillah, and he is Muslim since 1973. So I would like to say to you, my good brother, Assalamu Alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, on behalf of Us in Egypt.
Assalaam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, it's good to have you here. Alhamdulillah, it's good to have the brothers and sisters here joining us. And
Indeed.
we're going to start with we're going to take it straight from the beginning. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about your website, which is www.thebalancedmiddlepath.com. Again, that's The Balanced Middle Path, THEBalancedMiddlePath.com. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Bilal, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. The Balanced Middle Path came about because of a concern that I've had for a long time, that the people who are concerned about practicing Islam in their lives, implementing Islam, we come from the experience of the West, and many of us came to Islam with a lot of enthusiasm and very high aspirations. But we didn't have a lot of information about the practical aspect as living as Muslims because we lived in the West. So the Balanced Middle Path is a response to what I see as the imbalance in a lot of Muslims in taking the authentic Sunnah and the revelation and the legislation that Allah has provided us in the Quran and finding where we can find crosswalks in behavior and putting this in our everyday life. Family life, raising children, marriage, business, education. You know, all of us are not going to be scholars or students of knowledge. But each one of us has a role that Allah has written for us that we should discover. We should make effort and discover that role and implement the Quran and the Sunnah to the best of our ability in our practical affairs.
Now, age range. Who can benefit from this site?
Anyone can benefit from this site. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made the mizan something that is recorded for the human being after the age of discernment. So as soon as the human being at the age of puberty, of bulugh, is able to discern right and wrong, the mizan is set up, the balance is set up. So anyone who can understand, concepts and ideas, 10, 12 years old, till the time that we reach old age.
Okay. All right. Well, look, let's get right into it because we're talking Hijra here, and we're going to dive right into this topic. I myself, I'm a muhajir also, and I had some good experiences and some great experiences actually, and some stripes on my back to go along with it. So our brother Zaid is here to help you to minimize any stripes that you may come across. But let's start with the most important thing firstly. Tell us something about, somebody says, listen, you guys are talking about going out there to some other country. I'm from America. I'm from the UK. I'm from Canada. I'm not from that country. Why should I am a Muslim, why should I want to go out to Egypt or Bahrain or something like that? Why should I?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated Hijrah. And we find the evidence for that legislation in the Quran and in the Sunnah. We should pay attention to what Allah has revealed in Surah An-Nisa in the 97th ayah, where we all know this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala questions those who did not go out for the Ghazwa of Badr, the Battle of Badr. And they complained that we were weak and unable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the ability to go out, to hajjuru biha, for them to go out into the earth and to make hijrah to the place where their religion was safe. So we have some conditions that we have derived from the fuqaha, the people who look at the fiqh issues in Islam, and they have given us 3 clear reasons why we should make hijrah. 1, if you have the ability to. 2, if you are oppressed in a particular land. And 3, if you cannot visibly show the symbols of Islam in that place and practice your religion unmolested.
When you say show the symbols of Islam, I don't know, but would you say that France, for example, now is banning the headscarf, and these countries banning the headscarf, would that qualify?
These countries are becoming dangerously close to requiring Muslims to make hijrah because they are becoming aggressively prohibitive for Muslims to practice their religion that has been legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay. All right. So just to bring everybody up to speed, maybe you're just joining us. I am Bilal Abdul Kareem, and I am here with For Us in Egypt. And we are here with our guest, Professor Zaid Adib Ansari, and we are going over the practical steps that you need to flourish in the land of the Muslims. Now, let me just start right there. I mean, you know, I think the brothers and sisters are clear, and we just wanted to start there with the fact that Hijrah is legislated. I mean, some scholars may say it's obligatory, some may say that it's only highly recommended and depending on your circumstance and situation. But we want to get into the actual topic, which is how do you flourish? So why don't we start off with let's begin with the passports. Let's begin with paperwork. Let's start there.
Well, for those who are living in America, the passport requirement is the first practical tool that one must have. And the passport requirement has been probably one of the things that has prevented a lot of Muslims from understanding how to go through this administrative procedure. There are passport applications almost in every major post office in America.
Is that also for the UK as well?
And is also for the UK. I don't know if some constables' offices in the UK have the passport applications. What you have to do is get the passport application and study it well. Understand what they are asking. Then you have to know your personal circumstance. For men or women who may have some financial obligation with a state child care agency, they're going to check your Social Security number against a national database. And that national database, all states report to it, of any arrear child support amount over $5,000.
Okay.
If you have this condition, then they will block the acceptance of the passport. Okay? If you don't, then it'll cost you roughly $155 per person, unless they're children under the age of 12, and the fee goes down to like $115. Don't wait until the last minute when you've got the plane tickets in hand to try to get the passport.
Why? Lastminute.com doesn't work.
Lastminute.com has crashed. That website has crashed. What you need to do is plan adequately, because you can get an expedited passport, but it costs you $50 more. And if you've got 5 kids, that's a considerable amount of money to spend. One of the things I often like to say, that your lack of planning does not constitute my emergency.
Your lack of planning does not constitute my emergency. Right.
Okay? And this is what the government feels. Your lack of planning doesn't constitute their emergency. So plan well.
How long does it take for a normal passport to arrive?
If you don't go in the traditional vacation season, if you start filing your passport application anytime after February, then you can add a couple of weeks onto that, because you're moving into vacation season.
So we're talking a month?
So we're talking about any place between a month and 7 weeks.
Okay. Now, I just want to put something out there for the brothers and sisters, maybe in the UK and also in Canada, who might be watching this, who have some information. Maybe you can tell us, and you could tell us how long it takes to get a passport in Canada and how long it takes to get a passport in the UK, and we can pass that information along to the brothers and sisters. Right. Okay, so now we're talking passports. Go ahead.
The next step is you want to, assess very carefully what the other legal requirements are of paperwork. You're going to need what is called attested documents. The attestation of documents occurs with the State Department or the Interior Ministry of your country. To have your documents attested, one of the most usual places that people have this is a place called WES. It is a World Education Services, but they attest all kinds of documents. The attestation of your educational certification, be it a GED, high school diploma, or even your children's transcripts.
Okay, this is to get the passport?
No, this is the next step after the passport.
Okay.
Okay? Because what you're doing, you're getting a readiness procedure together, and you're really packing your bags.
All right.
Before you go get your old socks and your shirts, you've got to have a packing the bag mentality about getting these legal steps taken care of. This administrative paperwork. So, because you're going to go to a country, you might want to put your children in one of the schools.
So you have to get your their transcripts.
You have to get their transcripts. You have to get attested. You have to get their original birth certificates. You have to find a way to get any medical records that are relevant to the medical verification of that country for children. There's a separate set of medical verifications for adults that we'll talk about in a minute. But you want to make a checklist for yourself, and if you don't have the time or the effort to make a checklist, we've put a checklist on thebalancedmiddlepath.com.
Okay.
It is a Hijra readiness checklist. And that checklist is been programmed to give you a readiness score.
Okay. Why don't you give them that again? So that they can, yeah. Why don't you just come a little closer to me?
Okay.
Yeah. And give that to them again. Again, this is thebalancedmiddlepath.com, and give them
Thebalancedmiddlepath.com. We have developed a Hijra readiness checklist that allows the user to look at 10 Hijra conditions. And there's a score that we've assigned to readiness, partial readiness, and recycle. And once you finish the readiness checklist and you click the finish button, it will give you a score. Now that score will give you a small text box, and that text box will inform you, in our opinion, whether or not you've satisfied all the requirements of readiness. And that score leads to another step that we'll talk about in a minute that we have on the website in assessing the financial readiness.
Okay. All right. Now, this again, this is thebalancedmiddlepath.com, and hopefully I won't have to spell that again because I'm sure to mess that up at some point. But you guys all know it, thebalancedmiddlepath.com.
That's right.
So that should be easy enough. Now, this is where you would go to. Firstly, you've got to get your passport. You've got to get the
you've got to get your
transcripts.
passport, your transcripts, your birth certificates, your medical records.
And your medical records,
Okay.
all attested. Now,
Not your medical records, but your documents that act as shahada or certificates of something that you've done.
fine.
Okay.
Okay. Tell us again where to go to get this attested, just so that it's clear for them.
Okay, www.wes.org.
That's www.wes.org, and that's Winston Eating Sugar.org.
Yes.
Okay.
The World Education Services. The cost, and we'll talk more about specific country requirements, but the cost in general is about $150 to have a educational certificate attested.
Okay. Fine. For some.
The other thing that you have to have attested is your marriage license. We know that, you know, Muslims in America and in Great Britain and in Canada in recent years have been opting to use the masajids to establish the documentation of the marriage. And so there has been some very bad experiences Muslims have about going to the state and getting married in terms of the state, you know, having jurisdiction over your children and other things. So a lot of Muslims elect not to get married in the state court.
Okay.
And they get married in the masjid. Now, a masjid marriage certificate is valid in the eyes of the Sharia. You're married, and there's no doubt about that. But those who do not hold the belief that the civil society of the religious institution has the jurisdiction to sanction marriage question the marriage certificate of the masjid. So if you come to the lands of the Muslims, and we have 12 countries that we're going to talk about, each one of those countries, you have to have a marriage certificate from a state. Now, that's a challenge. One of the countries that I made Hijra to before I came to Egypt, you know, I was unable to navigate and find a way to get my family to make Umrah because I didn't have marriage certificates for my wives to travel with me. So, again, we'd like for you to go to the balancedmiddlepath.com, and we have a tab on there where you can send us a note that you would like to get a Islamic marriage certificate from a Muslim country, and we will get back with you and explain to you what you have to do at a very reasonable procedure and well as financial obligation of what it takes to get a marriage certificate from a Muslim country.
Okay, just to bring everybody up to speed, again, I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, for Us in Egypt. That is www.usinegypt.com. Usinegypt.com. And we are with our guest, Professor Zaid Adib Ansari, originally from Ohio, and I'm originally from New York. And we are discussing the practical steps that you need to flourish in the lands of the Muslims. Now, we just covering the topic of the marriage license and such like that. I think it's also important for them to know so that they understand the importance of it. For example, you might come to a country where the laws are lax and you can just get a tourist visa, for example. But then when you want to make Umrah, you want to make Hajj, or you want to do some other things, you're really going to need that piece of paper that says that Fatima and Abdullah are married.
Yes.
And it has to be a legal document when you come here, because things are a little bit different out here, and that's just the way that it is.
That's just the way it is. Bilal, when I came here, I have more than one wife. And that is always an issue with trying to get a legal document and a state other than a Muslim state to recognize this. And so I needed to have I have a work visa here in Egypt, and I needed to place my wife's under my work visa after my work here in Egypt, which is the Republic of Gambia, that I've been making efforts to build a life there since around 2001. I have a marriage certificate from the Chief Qadi in Gambia, and that allowed me, when I went to immigration here, to have virtually trouble-free, to get my wife on my visa here and all my children, and without any problem. If I would have had my masjid marriage certificate, they would have given me a hard time. Mm-hmm. So it's real important, not for just Hijra, or just for the purpose of Hajj or Umrah, but if you want to establish a business, some of the schools in which you enroll your children want to see the iqamah of your children, and they want to see the iqamah of the mother and the father as well.
I think it's also important to note that unfortunately nobody likes to die.
Yes.
You see, but if a husband and a wife come, for example, and the woman's name in her passport is Barbara Sanchez, for example. But she accepted Islam and she changed her name to Basmala, or whatever she may have changed her name to. And unfortunately, she may have passed away here. And her family, who may be non-Muslim, may be Christian or may be Jewish, will say, well, look, we want her to be shipped back home, embalmed, and we're going to take all of that hijab and all that other stuff off of her. And she's going to be buried in a dress just like she used to go to Sunday school. And then you'll say, stop the procedure. This is not according to Islam. She should be buried with the place where she passed away in. Mm-hmm. You have no legal document to say that this woman was your wife. It's only that's only your word for it. And when you come to these countries, they're not going to be so quick to accept that.
Exactly. So that's one of the practical tools that we really stress. That is a major part of the readiness checklist that one looks into. And of course, if you're not married, that's not an issue. But if you are married or you intend to get married, it's important for you to understand that the civil ceremony of the imam or the trusted elder is is Sharia sufficient? But when you travel and do business and try to get other things done, it is not sufficient.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. But now, I'm sure the brothers and sisters here, they're gonna need a little information about some of these countries because, you know, some of them may sit there, they might just say, look, let's spin the globe.
Okay.
Okay. Where do I go? What suits me? The United Arab Emirates suits some people. Going to Gambia suits other people. And we know that you've traveled around a lot, alhamdulillah, and you've actually lived in 4 different countries.
Yes.
So I'm going to throw a couple of countries at you. And I want you to give us a little bit of a bird's eye view so if the brothers and sisters who are watching it, they can get an idea. Maybe this country might suit me, not maybe the other one. And of course, you're going to have to do your research. But inshallah, maybe you can give us a little bit of a bird's eye view.
Okay.
All right. Why don't we start with the UAE? That's the United Arab Emirates in the here in the Middle East. Why don't you start there? Tell us something about that country.
The United Arab Emirates is composed of 7 different confederated emirates. It would give you like states, the feeling of a state. Each one of the emirates has its challenges and its opportunities. I lived for a few years in the emirate of Ras Al Khaimah. Ras Al Khaimah is the most northern emirate on the border of the Persian Gulf, near the country of Oman. And it is not an oil-rich emirate. It has mountains and a lot of minerals in terms of its main industry. If one goes to a place like the UAE, most of the Gulf countries particularly in the UAE, they have some very specific residency or work requirements for visas. They shape their visa policy by the country where you're from. If you're from Bangladesh, India,
Meaning if you have a Bangladeshi passport.
if you have a Bangladeshi passport,
Okay.
an Indian passport, a Pakistani passport, a Filipino passport, they have tiers of eligibility for employment. So you'll find that the plumbers, the builders, the electricians, the cab drivers, they can come and get a iqama in the UAE, and their amount of money that they earn or the kind of educational credential that they have can be very rudimentary. And they'll be there for years. If you're from the West, however, from the United States or England or Australia or Canada, the amount of money that you have to earn a month to bring your family is at around 10,000 dirham. Dirham is 3.67 to the US dollar.
So we must be talking about, we might as well say you got to bring in around 3,000 US dollars.
About
2,700.
About 3,100 US dollars a month to bring your family, to get your family there on your visa. The other thing is they have job classifications. Most of the classifications begin with the threshold of a BS or a BA degree.
Okay, before you go into that, I just wanted to just to drive this point home. $3,000 or $3,100 is the threshold of a monthly income that the person would have to bring in.
Yes.
So you have to kind of keep in mind that if you teach English, you're probably not going to bring home $3,000 a month. Would we assume that?
Most of the wages, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But what you have to keep in mind is that when you're selecting a country, you have to select the country against your profile, your personal profile. The cherished days of going to the UAE or Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Kuwait or Bahrain to teach English as a second language have faded and they're almost gone. Those economies that have been flourishing because of their natural gas and their oil revenue are planning a transition to the time when they won't have those reserves. So they're shifting their economic sector, and in the shift of their economic sector, they're shifting their manpower deployment in the kind of skills that they need from the West.
Which is?
Which is, in Saudi Arabia in particular, they are moving into light manufacturing. Manufacturing sector in Saudi Arabia has increased at about 30, has grown about 30% since 2006.
Okay, when you say light manufacturing, well, make it clear for us.
Light manufacturing is the re-engineering, fabrication, and putting things together from raw materials that came from someplace else. Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia is doing furniture manufacturing.